Washington Democratic Congressman Adam Smith. Congressman Smith, great to see you. Coming out of Mill's report there, do you think Musk should be allowed to give this money away to voters?
No, I mean, you should not be allowed to buy votes. I mean, we have a major problem in this country that a few really wealthy people can have undue influence on elections. Look, this is all a result of the Citizens United decision that ruled unlawful the McCain-Feingold law, which would have limited the amount of money that an individual can spend on these sorts of independent expenditures. I mean, it really does great damage to the democracy when someone can spread around tens of millions, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars. That gives that individual vastly more influence than an individual voter. Each voter should have equal power. And I don't agree with the Supreme Court decision that said money is equal to speech. I don't think Elon Musk, because he's worth $300 billion, should have 300 billion times more of a voice than any other voter or person in this country.
And Congressman, you called it buying votes, and that, of course, is the criticism, is calling it buying votes. We did have former Wisconsin governor on the program, Governor Scott Walker, and he said, yeah, look, it might be splitting hairs, but it's not buying votes. It's signing a petition, and some people may not even be in that state and be even eligible to vote. If we can, though, we'll go ahead and move on to the other breaking news that we've had today. So President Trump is now reportedly threatening to bomb Iran if they do not work on a new nuclear deal. Earlier on in the show, I spoke to Republican Congresswoman Kat Cammack about her stance on Trump's words. Take a listen. I'll let you react.
Now, no one wants to see bombs dropping. No one wants to see another war pop off. Clearly, you know where President Trump is. He was the mastermind behind the Abraham Accords, which was the largest step towards peace in the Middle East. But remember, Iran, they have been shouting death to America, death to Israel. And we have to really question, does a murderous regime really intend to use nuclear weapons for peace? No, of course not. And so I think this is, again, President Trump exhibiting tough leadership. No one wants to see this escalate, but clearly soft talk has not worked up until this point.
Again, Trump saying if there is not a deal, there will be bombs. So, Congressman, you're the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Does Congresswoman Cammack have a point that Trump's tough leadership works?
No, I mean, the point about the Abraham Accords leading to, the biggest step towards peace in the Middle East. Well, what has happened since those Abraham Accords? We've got a full-scale war in Gaza. We've got the war against Hezbollah in Lebanon. We've got the war that Donald Trump just started against Yemen, a bombing campaign that's been going on for over 2 weeks now. The war in Gaza actually has restarted since Donald Trump became president. And now he wants to spread that war to Iran. And also, let's remember that Donald Trump is the one who tore up the JCPOA, the nuclear deal that we had in place that was stopping Iran from pursuing a nuclear weapon. That was negotiated with 6 different countries in addition to Iran and was working. Donald Trump threw that away, and now Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon. So threatening everybody, and also the secondary sanctions. Now he's threatening dozens of different countries. It is going to push countries away from us. It's going to alienate not just our friends and allies, but a whole bunch of neutral countries as well. And it's going to make conflict more likely, and we've already seen that.
And
as I said, sorry.
No, it's all right. Since you brought up the Houthis in the Red Sea and the bombing campaign happening there, his reasoning is that they've been blocking this main trade path, and that, of course, causes prices to go up around the world, whether it's Europe or what matters to us is here at home. So what are your thoughts on that? Where does that need to go from here?
I know what his reasoning is, and I don't disagree with an aspect of it, but the dishonesty behind it. I mean, remember, Donald Trump ran for president saying that if he was president, peace would basically break out all over the world. He'd get us out of every war. He'd solve every problem. On day one, in many instances, these wars would be over. Well, that's rather clearly not true. So he can't do that. And so the promises have not matched the reality. And I think the Trump administration is running headlong into the reality that conflicts are difficult to resolve. Yes, Yemen, the Houthis are blocking the Red Sea. Joe Biden attacked Yemen on a number of occasions. That didn't work. What is different this time We're like 17, 18 days into the bombing campaign now, and the Red Sea's not open. So it'd be great to hear from the president, what's the plan? How is this going to lead to the Houthi stopping blocking of the Red Sea? So the main contrast I want to draw for your viewers is remember the campaign, and remember Donald Trump saying all these problems in the world, they were just because of Joe Biden's weakness. When I become president, everything will be solved. I hope we now have a greater understanding for just how difficult and complicated that is, and also for the fact that you simply cannot bully and be belligerent across the world and have everything fall into place. We're seeing that in Ukraine, where somehow the president is surprised that Vladimir Putin hasn't stopped his war after the President Trump, gutted support for Zelensky and propped up Putin's arguments about what was going on in Ukraine. So there's reason to be alarmed about the Trump administration approach. Right now, it's leading to more conflict. When will it lead to less?
Well, we do know the president likes to speak in hyperbole, especially on the campaign trail. One win he can seem to claim, though, right now is that the border appears to be way more secure than it ever was under Joe Biden.
Yes.
But the economy seems to be struggling in many people's eyes, and we've got these wars still raging in Gaza, as well as Ukraine now for more than 3 years now. And Trump also saying he is very angry with Russian President Vladimir Putin in this interview, comments on ending the war, saying that it's not going in the right direction. So Congressman Trump was very confident he could get Russia and Ukraine to come to this deal and reach an agreement so the bloodshed would end. Is there a way forward for peace? What would you like to see the president do?
Well, in this context, Trump is just being a fool. I mean, anyone could have told you that from the very start. I mean, coming in and cutting off aid and support for Ukraine, cutting off intelligence sharing, cutting off arms, cutting off aid, chastising Zelensky, taking Putin's interpretation of the war that somehow Putin isn't the one who started it, all the while doing nothing to put any pressure on Russia and Vladimir Putin. Shocking. That didn't work. Putin didn't go, oh, you're right, everything will be fine, I'll stop the war now. What we need to do, and what we were in a position to do, support Ukraine, give them security guarantees so that Putin knows he can't take all of Ukraine, which we were doing a decent job of. Now, the one thing that I do agree in part with what President Trump has done, we also had to get Ukraine to stop their maximalist goals. The idea of retaking all Ukrainian territory, trying Putin for war crimes, forcing Russia to repay for it. That wasn't repay for rebuilding Ukraine. That wasn't realistic, but nor was it realistic to put all the pressure on Ukraine and none of the pressure on Russia. Putin has said over and over again, he wants all of Ukraine. And as long as Donald Trump just opens the door wide for Putin to do that, that's not going to get us to peace. And I think that's what President Trump has now run into.
The issue I think people are going to be talking about around the water cooler tomorrow is Trump saying that he was, quote, not joking about seeking a third term, and, quote, there are methods to run again. It would, of course, go against what's in our Constitution. How would Democrats fight back? And are you concerned that this is realistic? And do you realistically think he could potentially win again?
Look, I'm very concerned about it. I mean, there's never been much doubt from when Donald Trump, refused to accept the outcome of the 2020 election. I don't know if you want to call him a fascist. He's definitely an authoritarian. He does not respect the laws of this country. He does not respect the Constitution. He wants to grab as much power as possible. And I don't know how much clearer he has to make that before people start recognizing that that's exactly what he's planning on doing. Yes, he's going to try to run for a third term. I don't know whether he's going to succeed or not. But our ability to stop him would start with a whole lot of Republicans speaking out against this aggressively. And don't give us this line about, oh, take him, what is it? Take him, don't take him literally, take him seriously. Well, I'm taking him seriously about how he stormed the U.S. Capitol back in 2020 to try and stop a legitimately elected president from taking office. He is an authoritarian who is trying to shred our Constitution in favor of his rule and setting up an oligarchy. That's what he is doing. So let's take that very seriously, and let's alert the American people and stop him from doing it.
Well, at NewsNation, we like to always share both sides. We appreciate you arguing yours. Washington Democrat Congressman Adam Smith, ranking of the House Armed Services Committee. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the chance.
Of course. All right, bodies remain under the rubble. Look at this. Rescue efforts are still going on, but